Okay, think about our cities for a second. What comes to mind? Probably a lot of steel, glass, and concrete, right? But what if our buildings could be, well, more than that? What if they could actually be alive? I'm talking about breathing ecosystems that could heal our cities from the inside out. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. So let's dive into this pretty radical concept, the vertical forest.
So the architect behind this, Stefano Boeri, put it in this really simple kind of poetic way. He called it a tower for trees inhabited by humans. And when you stop and think about that, it completely flips architecture on its head. See, this isn't about building a condo and then, sticking a few plants on the balcony as an afterthought. No. The whole idea is to build a home for a forest first, a living, breathing organism that we humans just happen to live inside of. It's a huge shift in how we think about where we live.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First up, we'll look at why our cities even need something like this. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, the incredible engineering of the very first vertical forest. After that, we have to talk about the tricky parts. Is this a green dream or just greenwashing? We'll look at the critiques. And to wrap it all up, we'll see how this wild idea is going from just one building to, believe it or not, an entire city.
Okay, so let's start with the why. Why do our cities need lungs? Well, if you look around most modern cities, they've become these vast, what you might call mineral landscapes. It's just towers of concrete, steel, and glass as far as the eye can see. And this creates a whole bunch of environmental problems that, let's be honest, we're all pretty familiar with by now.
So, on one hand, you've got the mineral city. All those hard, reflective surfaces, they create what are called heat islands, which basically just jack up the temperature, make us use way more energy for AC, and pollute the air. Plus, they kind of cut us off from nature, right? But the forest city concept is a direct answer to that. The goal is to demineralize our cities by wrapping them in a living skin, a skin that actually breathes. It absorbs CO2, pumps out oxygen, and brings biodiversity right back into the downtown core. And the big idea behind all of this has a name. It's called biophilic design. The key phrase to remember here is that it's about moving plants from ornament to organism. Think about that. We're not talking about just, a few decorative potted plants. This is about completely re-engineering the building so that the greenery is an active, structural, and totally essential part of the architecture itself. Which brings us to the building that really started it all, the one that proved this wasn't just some crazy dream on paper. Let's go ahead and deconstruct the anatomy of the iconic Bosco Verticale in Milan, that's Italian for vertical forest, and see how they brought this incredible vision to life. I mean, the scale of this thing is just staggering. When it was finished back in 2014, these two towers became home to a living ecosystem that's equivalent to 30,000 square meters of woodland. That's a huge forest, all packed onto a tiny city footprint. And the benefits? They're real, and you can measure them. Like, it literally cools the apartments inside by about 3 degrees Celsius in the summer. That means less need for blasting the air conditioning. So the big question is, how on earth do you support an entire forest up in the sky? This is where the engineering just gets wild. The whole structure depends on these massive cantilevered terraces. They're made of super thick post-tension concrete, which is just a fancy way of saying concrete that's been beefed up with steel cables to make it unbelievably strong. These terraces stick out more than 3 meters to hold the giant root balls of the trees. And yeah, they absolutely had to test the whole thing in a wind tunnel. Why? Because a full-grown tree high up on a skyscraper basically acts like a giant sail in the wind. And of course, safety is everything. I mean, you can't have trees falling off a skyscraper. So they developed this really meticulous 3-stage safety system. Step 1 is an anchor for the root ball. Step 2, they add a permanent steel cable, kind of like a safety harness. And then, for the biggest trees way up at the top, there's a third redundant bind, a whole steel cage that locks the root system right into the concrete. They are leaving absolutely nothing to chance. But this is so much more than just a bunch of trees stuck on a building. It's a scientifically curated ecosystem. This is so smart. The botanists strategically placed deciduous trees, the kind that lose their leaves, on the sunny, south-facing walls. That gives shade in the hot summer but lets the warm sun in during the winter. Then, on the colder north-facing walls, they put hardy evergreens to act as insulation all year round. And this botanical intelligence has actually worked. It's attracted over 20 species of birds and countless insects, creating this amazing little pocket of biodiversity way above the busy city streets. So you might be asking, how do you garden this thing? Well, get this. A team of specialized arborists literally rappel down the sides of the building to take care of everything. And their official title is the Flying Gardeners. I mean, come on, that has to be one of the coolest job titles in the world, right? It's a brand new profession that was literally invented because of this building. Okay, but it's not all a perfect green fairy tale. The vertical forest idea has faced some really serious and frankly very valid criticisms, so we have to talk about them. Is this a genuine solution for our cities, or is it just really expensive greenwashing? All right, let's start with the biggest and most obvious hurdle, the cost. In Milan's Bosco Verticale, the monthly maintenance fees for some apartments can hit €1,500. A month! So yeah, the original project was definitely a luxury item, and that raises a huge question about accessibility. Is this a model that can work for everyone, or is it just creating a green paradise for the ultra-wealthy? And then there's the really big environmental paradox, kind of the project's hidden cost. To hold up all that weight, the soil, the water, the trees, you need a ton of reinforced concrete. And as we know, producing concrete creates a massive amount of CO2 emissions. So critics ask a fair question. Does the CO2 the trees absorb over their lifetime actually make up for the huge carbon debt created just to build the thing? It's a really complicated and very real debate. You know, these challenges aren't just theoretical arguments either. They have played out for real. To really get a handle on the risks, we need to look at a tale of two forests, the big success story in Milan and a cautionary tale from a very similar project in Chengdu, China. And the biggest difference between success and failure, it really boils down to one word: governance. See, in Milan, you've got that centralized team of flying gardeners managing the whole thing like a single ecosystem. But in Chengdu, they left maintenance up to the individual residents. And when not many people moved in, the gardens got overgrown. The drainage systems failed, creating stagnant water, and in a humid climate, well, that became a perfect breeding ground for a massive mosquito infestation. The whole project was basically overrun. It's a powerful lesson. You don't just build a vertical forest, you have to manage it constantly and expertly. But look, the story doesn't just end with failure and critiques. That's not how progress works. The concept is learning from its mistakes. It's adapting. It's evolving from a one-off experiment into something that could actually be a scalable blueprint for our cities. And you can see that evolution happening right here on this timeline. It all kicked off in 2014 with that luxury prototype in Milan. But fast forward to 2021, and you've got the Trudeau Tower in the Netherlands. They took the same core idea and adapted it for social housing, creating affordable apartments for people with lower incomes. And the future? The vision now is to scale this up to the level of an entire city, which is exactly what the master plan for Liuzhou in China is all about. So even with those valid critiques about carbon debt, the positive, ongoing impact of a single project is just undeniable. Every single year, those towers in Milan pull about 14 tons of CO2 out of the air and pump out 9 tons of fresh oxygen. I mean, those are literally the lungs of the city at work. And this is where the idea goes from being cool architecture to being potentially world-changing. The Liuzhou Forest City in China, this is a master plan for an entire city of 30,000 people. We're not just talking about 1 or 2 cool-looking towers anymore. We're talking about a city where every single building, offices, homes, hotels, schools, you name it, is a living, breathing vertical forest. And right here, you can see the incredible power of scaling this idea up. Just look at the difference in the numbers. One project in Milan absorbs 14 tons of CO2 a year. The entire city of Liuzhou is designed to absorb 10,000 tons. Oxygen production jumps from 9 tons to 900 tons. This is the moment the idea goes from being a beautiful symbol to a truly meaningful weapon in the fight against climate change. So, when you boil it all down, the vertical forest is way more than just a new look for buildings. It's really a fundamental question about the kind of future we want to build for ourselves. Our buildings have always shaped our lives, right? They affect our health, our mood, our connection to the world. So the question is, what if the next generation of buildings could do more than just keep the rain off our heads? What if our buildings could actually breathe?